Friday morning. Welcome into the show. Thanks for tuning in. It is 8 a.m. on the East Coast. It's super early. I get it. It's 5 a.m. out on the West Coast. But if you're up and you're watching, kudos to you. Hats off to you for taking the show in, for watching the show. We really do appreciate all of the support, all the viewers, all the responses, all the feedback. It's a pleasure to get to do this each and every weekday. It was a nice holiday break, and then I got sick for a couple weeks, and we had to delay the start of our new year with the show. But we got up and running earlier this week, and we're excited to be back. Our show today is featuring a guest that we love to have on the show. He's a friend of the show, friend of mine, Jonathan Rednauer, does amazing work with the GCPL, and we're going to talk to him about the GCPL, but also about another project that he's involved with as well. Looking forward to catching up with him and getting into to those things. But I wanted to open the show today. I know there's a lot going on in American soccer this weekend, because there's a slew of people, thousands of people who have descended upon the city of Baltimore, and therefore the United Soccer Coaches Convention. I hated that I couldn't be there. I really wanted to get back to the convention this year, and especially with it being Baltimore. When I was growing up, that is where my aunt and uncle and my cousins lived, and so I have fond memories of the city of Baltimore and D.C. and that whole area, and I miss being up there. It's been probably a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years since I've been up there, and I was really looking forward to getting there. Was not able to make it up this weekend. So all of you who catching this show or clips of the show, I hope you're having a great conference. The great folks at the United Soccer Coaches do an amazing conference. It's the highlight of the year for so many coaches. I know I talk to so many who look forward. They pencil this in. They circle this every year. That's where they want to go meet up with friends, reconnect with friends, learn in the sessions. It's just a really good event every year, every January, and I hate that I wasn't able to make it, but hopefully you're getting a lot out of it. Hopefully you're taking a lot of notes, and taking those back with you when you leave after the weekend to go back and get back to work in your clubs, in your colleges, in your schools, etc. So hope you're having a great weekend. Hope everything's going well for you if you're watching this from the United Soccer Coaches Convention. I wanted to start the show today and talk a little bit of some updates on what we're looking at going into the U.S. Soccer AGM. So West Virginia has submitted a policy, we talked about it before on the show, that would ensure equality for our men's and women's professional leagues. And so far, that initial proposal was kicked out by the board of directors and the rules committee, claiming that their initial proposal was too ambiguous or conflicting. There was a lot of excuses as to why they didn't think it was a good fit in the way that it was worded. The overall idea of this policy is to ensure that our professional leagues are given the same voting weight regardless of sex. So if you are Major League Soccer and you are the first division men's league, if you get 5% of the overall vote in the election, that the NWSL as the Division I women's league should get the same. So that is the the basis of the policy proposal. And, I don't really know why they were looking for ways to kick this out, but they did. And apparently, I've heard that the board actually kind of said to the pro council, you guys need to figure this out for yourselves, etc. Like, you need to get this handled. Well, West Virginia and Chris Kessel and the contingent there with West Virginia have submitted an updated proposal earlier this week. And so we'll see how that goes back through the Rules Committee in advance of this upcoming U.S. Soccer AGM. And that updated policy proposal makes it very simple, very clear, that, this is just about equality, so that there's no discrimination based on sex. So if you're a men's professional league and you're designated as Division I, and you're a women's professional league and you're designated as Division I, if one league gets, 10 votes, the other league gets 10 votes. If you're in Division II men's league and you're a Division II women's league, then you do the same kind of equality structure. So it shouldn't be conflicting with any bylaw or any existing rules. It's a shame that this is a policy that needed to be submitted in the first place. But just to give you an idea of what has taken place in recent elections, the last public vote with a contested election was the 2018 presidential election, which, if you've watched this show at all, you know that I was heavily involved with, and working and running Eric Winalda's campaign for president of U.S. Soccer. There were several other candidates running, including Hope Solo, a friend of the show, and those votes, those weighted votes that were set up before the voting took place, set aside that Major League Soccer was basically getting a 3-1 voting percentage margin. So they were getting, basically, for every one vote NWSL was getting, Major League Soccer was getting 3 votes, even though both were Division I professional leagues. And that's just absurd. And the federation should not be condoning that kind of discrimination into its voting process and procedures. So West Virginia has taken the bold and courageous step in preparation for the 2020 U.S. Soccer AGM in Nashville to say, hey, we are going to put forth a policy proposal regardless of what the professional council says, regardless of what the board of directors says. We're going to put together and put forth a policy proposal that puts on paper the requirement that every professional league sanction at the same divisional level, so D1 men's, D1 women's, they're all getting the same amount of votes. And the crazy thing when you look at these situations, if you were to go on the English FA's website, if you were to go to the Premier League's website, if you were to go to the English Football League's website, so those are 3 of the bigger or biggest websites concerning English football, English soccer, right? So you have the FA, which is our version of U.S. soccer. You have the Premier League, which is the Division I league in England, and then the English Football League that operates levels 2, 3, and 4. There is so much documentation, things written down, including, how many seats in stadiums, if under the ground has to be heated, etc. There are all of these things in place for the leagues to operate, for the English FA to operate, etc. when you look at U.S. soccer and the rules that are there, they are very bare in comparison. There is no published bidding policy, procurement policy for the federation. It's not published in the policy manual. It's not in the bylaws. They can spend money however they want to. No accountability. There is no written rules regarding discrimination in voting. None. There are no written rules when it comes to the standards as to which clubs get sanctioned and leagues get sanctioned professionally. They're not in the policy manual. They're not in the bylaws. And you can go down issue after issue and find that the federation does a really poor job with their paperwork. Now, conspiracy theorists would argue that they do this so that they have carte blanche to do whatever they want. And it's much harder to hold them accountable. And that may be true. But the truth is, it needs to be written. The truth is, it needs to happen. There needs to be rules published for all members, regardless of whether, the rule is about the professional leagues in the voting for men's versus women's leagues, or the standards of what it means to be a Division I league, a Division I club, etc. Regardless of whether it's the bidding or procurement policy, these things need to be published. They need to be written. They need to be publicly available and included for the general membership to have a say, to have a vote and influence on. You can't hold people accountable to unwritten rules. It's very difficult. We know that the federation has been found in violation of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee bylaws, all of this stuff under the Ted Stevens Act. We know from Hope Solo that they are, even right now, still in violation of some of the rules. So when you look at the organization, the way it's been run for years, Carlos Cordero has been in charge now for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in about 4 weeks. And we're still at a place where things are moving very slow. Don't have a lot of youth coaches. We finally have now gotten a men's and a women's GM. We promoted the first men's GM. Not sure why we didn't look at a female running everything, because they keep winning. But whatever. Those things are moving at a kind of snail's pace. We still haven't seen any progress on the Youth Diversity Task Force. I'm not a big fan of committees. Committees don't lead. Committees talk about a bunch of stuff and then nothing ever happens. There are real things that need to take place to improve American soccer. Wholesale changes in structure and in system and in access and opportunity and in sporting merit. But one of the things that we've got to make sure going into this AGM is we've got to make sure that more and more of these policies and bylaws and rules that should be included in the policy manual and in the bylaws are published. It needs to be legit. It needs to be legitimate. The federation for too long has been run almost like it's a neighborhood club. That it's a private social club. This is a national governing body. It's a national federation. There should be clearly published rules about how the money gets spent, how much has to, what's a threshold for before you have to get approval, what kind of big capital expenses that the general membership has to sign off on. There has to be guardrails, and that's what your bylaws and policies are supposed to be, written down, accountability of organizational competence. Recently, social media, U.S. Soccer Communications, just taken black eye after black eye with the way that they have talked to the public. Been very disparaging, making, ridiculing people that have asked questions. That is not the kind of behavior that should be tolerated at a federation level. There is so much housekeeping and house cleaning that needs to take place as we look ahead to this AGM in 2020 here coming up in February in Nashville. It is time that more state associations and others take it upon themselves to put forth these policy and bylaw amendments so that we can get this stuff documented. If the board of directors isn't going to do it themselves, and they've shown, unable to do it, to either have the will or to have the competency to pull it off, I don't know what it is, but if they're not doing it, then the general membership of the state associations and other organizational members who have authority under the bylaws to do it are going to have to do it. But it needs to be done if we are going to get this federation fixed, going in the right direction, and having things documented. For kudos to West Virginia, kudos to Illinois adults, as you guys have put forth bylaw and policy amendments to the Ductic brand booth, and checked out their products, bought a bunch of stuff, ordered a bunch of stuff. If you haven't, or if you're not at the convention, don't worry. Go to ducticbrand.com and use promo code DW Show. You'll get 10% off of your order, and that's at ducticbrand.com, DUKTIG brand.com. Use promo code DW Show, and you will get 10% off of your next order. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in on this Friday morning. A big friend of the show, does amazing work in the soccer sphere here in the U.S., Jonathan Rednauer. Welcome back to the show, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Appreciate you saying that I do amazing work. I try to just do work and to hear that it's amazing. It's a compliment. Thank you.
It is, man. You've inspired so many around the country to get involved, to get hands on, to do something right where you are, and I think it's a tribute to you and the guys that began as the Louisiana Premier League and then became the Gulf Coast Premier League and has continued to expand out your footprint and your reach and inspiration to people and clubs all over the country. So I definitely think that the work you guys have done have inspired a lot and should definitely be recognized. And I wanted to have you on today because there's some news that broke the other day, and we're going to get into a bigger win in just a minute, but news broke the other day concerning the GCPL, the announcement of a new executive director. Can you tell us quickly a little bit about that before we get to the other really big thing that we're going to get into today?
Sure, definitely. Again, appreciate the kind words. So we one thing that we thought about during the off season, what actually has been ongoing for the past few seasons, was trying to solidify an office staff and having somebody or a group of people on payroll to make sure the day-to-day operations were taken care of. Because as we continue to grow, more teams and obviously more quality of play and the more quality of how clubs are ran, the office work definitely, the paperwork definitely starts. Sean Esker is the current Louisiana Soccer Association president. And, he's actually somebody that we've worked with and known for quite some time. And when I say we, is me and Jeremy Pokelember, our president. He's followed us and he supported us. And, he's somebody that understands what we're looking to achieve. And I feel as though that he's done a lot of great things with the LSA during his tenure there, which I believe is about going on maybe 8 years now. He's just done an incredible job. So we feel as though he's the right person to kind of step in, take on a good majority of the duties that I was handling and Jeremy was kind of handling on the side, and really kind of focus on making sure things are taken care of correctly. And that gives us, me and Jeremy, a little more leeway to kind of focus on the bigger picture things. So that was our decision to bring Sean in, and we feel as though that he's the right person for the job.
So, before we move on, for anyone who's kind of followed the GCPL, this is just more, more in line with things you guys have been talking about amongst yourselves within the GCPL, but also even on shows like this, interviews where you guys have talked about continuing to grow the league. This is another step in that direction, more progress. And so
league again starting in second weekend of May, which is when all the college kids get off, and then pretty much being done on the last.
And in what is kind of the big idea, and where are you guys going to play this year?
The funny thing is that Crescent City Football Club probably was what stemmed the motion, I guess you would say, put everything in motion for creating something here a little more regionally and locally. Crescent City Football Club has kind of been something I've been playing with, me personally, the name and the crest and all that, probably since 2012, 2013. And once, trying to figure out exactly how somebody who doesn't have, as deep pockets as most people, and finding out, that the PDL at the time and NPSL, the cost of putting teams in and finding the right people, it just, there wasn't really anything that would allow a guy like me, an average guy like myself, to kind of create a club like Crescent City Football Club. So therefore, that's when I kind of reached out to Jeremy and said, hey, we need to kind of create something here that allows us to be able to, be the starting point for clubs that are looking to get off the ground. And I would probably say Port City and AFC Mobile are clubs that can probably attest to that. And, I don't know if they would be in the NPSL today if it weren't for the GCPL. So that is something where Crescent City Football Club began, was kind of more of an idea of getting a football club off the ground. But then, it pretty much stemmed with the Louisiana Premier League went into full effect. So I would probably say 2012, 2013 is when it all began. 2015 is when we kind of started playing on board and really kind of launch this thing and get it in motion. So here we are in 2020, finally going to kick a ball.
And are you guys going to kick a ball in the GCPL in your inaugural season?
Yeah, we announced it on Wednesday that we're joining the GCPL and for 2020, and that's our goal for this year. Year one is to again get off the ground and be in a league that allows us to compete at a good level on top of putting our brand out there.
So I want to take a little bit of a sidetrack for a minute and zoom out, and for the audience. Part of the reason why I kind of beat this drum and others beat their drums, Chris Kessel, a big friend of the show, you and so many others who talk about the need for improvement at a federation level, in a system and structure standpoint, league level, etc., is the fact that you have places like New Orleans, where you have the NFL in the Saints, and you have the NBA, and you have the years, and you look at a place like that, you look at the American soccer system, surrounding the game. Talk a little bit about New Orleans for the audience. People who they may know the Saints. I'm sure they probably watched the national championship game on Monday. For all those LSU crazy fans, and we got them where we live as well. Passed one today. He had his flags flying that one time in every few years when he was brave enough to do it with all the Bama and Auburn fans around. But tell us about New Orleans. Tell us about the culture, the place. Why New Orleans? Why is this a good idea? Why is the city of New Orleans perfect for a club and a project like Crescent City?
I'd probably have to say, being from here, born and raised, having a chance to really jump on the Saints bandwagon ever since I was a very young boy. I've been a Saints fan since I can remember. I remember my first game in 1987, playing against the Houston Oilers, and I remember that just the family that got together. We'd always get together with gatherings and having Popeye's chicken there, and I just remember everything about that and going through the ups and downs. And as I got older, going through the different eras of coaches and playoffs and not playoffs, and finally winning a playoff, and just the elation that you would get when your team did well, and just the overall passion that the Saints really brought to the city. It's just something that I feel as though that we have here for soccer, when it's bringing a party with us while we're playing. So what I mean by that is, not necessarily putting out really tapped into what could really be a big potential for the city, and we're hoping to really kind of showcase that.
So in New Orleans, no professional team. There's FC New Orleans that joined the GCPL last year. There's a big underbelly of a soccer culture there. So as you guys are getting off the ground in New Orleans with Crescent City, what are some things that you talk about a party, you talk about a festive atmosphere. If someone was going, hey, I want to check out a game this year, what kind of experience do you think you're gonna try to create for them? If you could kind of paint a picture with words, what would that feel like, look like, smell like? And I dropped that smell word because if you know anything about New Orleans, the food is amazing, right? So what is that party like? That festive atmosphere like?
Big, and so that's something that we're working on right now, is trying to find a home field that really kind of caters to very vibrant city. We're very eclectic when it comes to the people that are here. And you know, if you've been down here, you've seen the music, you heard the music, you've seen how beautiful the city can be, you've seen the art, and we really want to kind of add that element to our game. So while people show up to games, we might have some delicious food being cooked right there. We'll probably have some type of setup to where either it's our merchandise will definitely be there, but it might be a featured artist that we're showing at the game to where their stuff will be on display. Obviously, the music that we'll be playing will be, New Orleans music that, for me, being a former musician, is something that I really am passionate about, really kind of want to showcase. Is when people come to New Orleans to play Crescent City Football Club, they're going to hear, smell, and see what we're all about.
Absolutely. So when you look at putting together a club from scratch, you start it in reverse. So most people start the club and then later they're like, okay, we don't like where we're at, we're going to start a league. You started a league first, and now you're going back and starting a club. So tell us, what has the process been like for you from a learning experience? What have you been trying to do to get ready for this first season?
Their clubs from the ground level. You could probably talk to the people that have been in the GCPL. I probably texted them or emailed them and asked dissect what worked for them in their city, what didn't work for them, what were things that they felt that they could have improved on, what did they feel as though that they definitely should omit, should add. So I've kind of had a really, I guess you would say, a long process of kind of studying the American soccer landscape. And that's just coming from me. And then on top of that, our president, PJ Lynch, who runs probably the biggest soccer league in Louisiana here in New Orleans. And it's a nice, very well-ran league that's been going on for 10, 12 years now. And he's definitely done a great job of developing relationships with people here in New Orleans, talking to people. There's so many people that have come and go throughout his league, former college players, current up-and-coming players, just people who love soccer in general. So, he's had a good idea of kind of really talking about, finding out what these people are looking for in the city of New Orleans. And then Robbie, Robbie is a name that you might be familiar with because he is the current president for North Shore United. And so he's somebody who's actually ran his own club. He's on the North Shore, which is in Covington, Louisiana, which is about 30 minutes north of us, who has done a great job of getting his program up and running off the ground and really trying to showcase the talent that comes out of that particular area. So all three of us kind of bring a different dynamic to the table. So I would say that we've all really kind of had a good time in the past five years or so, and even longer for some, to really figure out what's the best approach to New Orleans, because it is kind of a very sticky dynamic here in New Orleans. There's so many different entities, soccer entities, and they all unfortunately don't work together. And so we're hoping that we can kind of fit ourselves into where the void is and work alongside with people. We're not here to rub shoulders with anybody the wrong way. We're kind of hoping that we can kind of all work.
So when you're looking at starting a club and you're having these conversations, and you're looking at representing the city of New Orleans, how important was it for you to figure out a brand identity that felt, authentic New Orleans?
Extremely important, almost to the point to where people said you're wasting your time on the branding and you need to build soccer first. So I've had a lot of people that we worked with that said, well, where's your team? And while I could assemble a team out of the people that I've worked with, the players that I've worked with over time, we didn't really have anything other than just kind of like an invitational thing. So a lot of people are like, well, where's your team? Where do you play at? Where's this and that? And they're just like, well, you don't have a team. You just have a crest. Well, that's right. I do have a crest. And the big thing for me was to really, the crest itself is to really showcase what I feel New Orleans is like. And so that's why, the crest, it does kind of represent. And there's something here in New Orleans that's it's a water meter cover. And that's kind of where the crest kind of came from, with the stars and the moon. And obviously us being the Crescent City, and then obviously Navy being something that represents the nighttime here in New Orleans. I felt as though that was very important to kind of have something that was that people can look at and say, oh, I recognize that. That's something, the water meter thing is a pretty big thing here in New Orleans. So the people in New Orleans will look at that crest and say, oh, yeah, that's definitely New Orleans, and they feel that. So that's something that definitely, me personally, I was very adamant about, because there's a lot of times it was like, hey, do we want to stick with Crescent City? Do we want to change the logo? And I'm like, no, we have to stick with this. This, for me, I feel as though it was the right branding, the right name. Once we grow.
Looking at the badge here, you've got the stars, the moon, kind of this navy.
Color of the New Orleans flag is blue, white, red. And so we wanted to kind of take that navy out of it. The gold in it, the gold fleur-de-lis represents, the gold fleur-de-lis on the New Orleans flag. And obviously, the New Orleans Saints being kind of a big thing here. So the gold fleur-de-lis, we feel as though kind of is what we wanted to stick with. And the light blue, is something I personally like. I just like the color. It kind of represents a cool, calm kind of, approach to things. And I feel as though in New Orleans, in a city where care forgot, that's just kind of how we are down here. We're cool, calm. Anybody can start a conversation with anybody. We like to just kind of hang out, and we just like to party. That's just who we are. So that's what the colors really represent.
So, picking up on this idea of New Orleans and representing New Orleans, we all know, if you paid any attention over the last 15 years, you had Katrina hit, and you know all of those stories. We know those stories. There's still parts of the city that still feel the effects from Katrina. When you look at the city over the last 5 to 10 years, have you seen any changes, any growth, anything that where you feel like, hey, we're back, or we're growing again, we're really getting back to what we were pre-Katrina, for the audience who maybe you've not been around in a while, maybe it's maybe you didn't come to New Orleans after Katrina. For the audience, tell us a little bit, just kind of zoom out of Crescent City for a second and talk about the city of New Orleans and the state of the city, kind of why it excites you to even look at a project like this in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 15 years since Katrina, and it's been areas like that, and you're talking about seeing watermarks pretty much up to the ceiling, and you're looking at all these pictures and these memorabilia just all over the house, and it's dirty and it's muddy, and it's it was definitely something that kind of made you sit back and think, will we ever get back to what we were? And I'd have to say that yes, we are. I'd probably say we've probably become stronger as a city. There's a lot of areas in our city currently right now that have really grown. Certain areas that were considered probably you didn't want to enter into, you didn't really want to kind of be around that area, was considered probably a lost cause at the time, has probably since been emptied out, cleaned up, and kind of rejuvenated a little bit. So there are still areas around the city that you drive by, and there's houses that have been boarded up for the last 15 years. But the city has definitely, I personally think, has definitely made a comeback, and it's definitely stronger than it was. So that just shows you the resilience of what New Orleans is. And people can say, oh, you live in an area that's, hurricanes. Why do you live in a city that's in a fishbowl and this stuff and that? Well, you fall in love with the city. I mean, I can't help that. Ever since at a young age, I've pretty much fallen in love with New Orleans. And even when I moved away to San Francisco, I was very homesick. And I definitely, when I came back home, it's the moment I stepped off that. So I feel as though that probably has a big part of everybody easing the pain and kind of coming back into New Orleans and settling down and trying to felt to do, is bring that to New Orleans.
Yeah, I bring up Katrina, just to kind of zoom out for a second and do a little bit of an overview, but really to get to a point, I'm happy that you use the word because you know it. You live there. This is your day-to-day life, and that word is resilience. When you look at a city, you look at a people, and you try to figure out, okay, what is the culture? And we know the festive part, and we've talked about that. We talk about the music and the food and the social aspects of New Orleans. But when you're building the culture of a club, an identity of a club, you're taking that part into account. But I think that other piece that you mentioned, the word resilience, to me it's just such a natural fit for a club in New Orleans. The city is resilient, and I definitely feel like it's such an appropriate way to look at the entire project, the culture of building the club, the kind of players that you put on the field. It goes back to, okay, how do we build a team that looks like New Orleans? Well, we want them to have a good time, but we want guys that are going to fight.
Yep.
And I don't mean like throw punches. I mean like they're going to fight from the standpoint of competitiveness. They're going to compete on the field. They're not going to give up. They see it with LSU, with their college football team. You see it with the Saints. Creating a football club from scratch. I think it's so important, whether you're in San Antonio, Texas, San Francisco, California, Chicago, New Orleans, Tampa. You figure out the essence of your community, the essence of your city. What are you? What is your culture? And hearing you talk excites me because I know that where you are and where you're from, and to hear you talk about the essence of building the culture and identity of the club around those things is exciting, even though you guys haven't even officially kicked off yet, and that's encouraging, and I think hopefully inspiring for others around the country who are figuring out, hey, I'd like to start a club in my community, in my city, and start to ask yourself some questions like, what is our city, what is our community, what are we known for, what is our culture, to build something around that. When you were talking to clubs that were joining the GCPL or being in the GCPL, and I know Port City, I know AFC Mobile, they would not be in the NPSL today without the GCPL, and they would tell you that. But when you have these conversations with, all of these different clubs, what are some of the things that you learned that you are now adapting and making your own with Crescent City? Maybe something that you didn't think of before that you're like, ooh, I like that. I'm going to borrow some of that and kind of mix it with our special sauce and make it our own. What are some things for somebody out there who's thinking about starting a club? What are some things that you could pass on to them, some insights that you learned asking and picking others' brains?
I'd probably say I picked up more don'ts than do's. I don't know if that's a negative thing or not. I'm watching some GCPL clubs get off the ground, and again, it's the league was set up to really kind of cater to that, to cater to teams that they're there. While you may have a large audience coming from a youth club or something like that, if you don't really, again, like we talked about, capture what it is that makes you special. And again, and I would say that here in New Orleans, a big thing that we're big on is that we're very prideful people. We're people that are in New Orleans. We love ourselves. We love the fact that this city is the way that it is. Obviously, there's some negatives, but there's a lot of positives. The people that are here, we love. So I would probably tell people they're looking to start a club, find what makes your city tick, what makes your community tick. Find out what makes them want to say, you know what? Yeah, I want to be a part of this. I want to attach myself to this because they represent me. That's probably some advice I would probably say that really needs to be, here, to where they just find what makes your community want to support you. And that may take some work. That may take some time to really kind of dissect what it is. And I've noticed that with a lot of the clubs that we've had join, is that, yeah, sure, they had a large fan base because they're big youth clubs. They've had, this and that. But when it came to social media presence and being out there and having events. And, the one thing I loved about AFC Mobile is a kit reveal, and they were constantly out into their community trying to say, hey, this is who we are. We're here for you. Tallahassee really kind of came on last year and kind of really showed you how that community club feels. And, I love those guys out there. So I would probably say if you're going to start a club, start with that. Start with trying to find out what your community wants, and what it's going to make for your guys to go out there and support you and put a good product out on.
Are starting kind of laying the groundwork now, looking ahead for May for you guys.
Time and has been a part of the GCPL has shown that there's a great talent. Obviously, FC New Orleans stepped in last year, has shown there's great talent. There's a lot of New Orleans boys that played for North Shore United last year. That shows that there's great talent in our city. We're looking to build a roster that's strictly local. We're not opposed to having people from out of town come in, depending on housing situation. But we feel as though that there is enough talent here in this city that we can really assemble a roster and put it together. Do we have people in mind? Sure. We've had an invitational already where we've kind of featured a good amount of players that played for both North Shore and Motagua. There's, obviously the people that I've personally worked with or coached in the past that definitely shown interest. We will have a tryout, but our goal this year is to bring on a coaching staff that is going to step in and trying to change the culture that here in New Orleans is trying to change it to where we are going to be a year-round club. But we will have training sessions throughout the week. There will be, other aspects of training as well that's attached to PJ's league, and there's also another entity that we're working with that will help with training as well. So we really kind of want to change the culture to where, like, listen, if you want to be a part of this team when it comes to GCPL or whatever league that we're in during the summer or long term, there is training. There is a precedent that we need to set that we need to be competing at a high level. So when people step on this pitch and they see who we are, they understand that we are working together. We're going to trust to basically build the roster, call the shots, and the board. We're going to step back and say, "You got it for you again."
And to see it all in person, because if you deliver on the food and the fun and the atmosphere, that's can't miss. So
Yep.
That if you're in New Orleans during the summer, maybe you plan your trip around catching one of these Crescent City matches.
Oh, definitely, yeah,
for sure. And I think you'll have a good time. When you look at the landscape of American soccer, let's zoom out for a second. There are leagues, regional leagues that are forming around the country, clubs that are ambitious and they're wanting to build something themselves and be a part of creating the change they want to see. What gives you the hope in the courage to bite off Crescent City, knowing the landscape of where we are? Why take this on now? Why start now? Do you feel like you can make a difference locally and also be a part of that change nationally? Like, why step off and jump in the deep end in 2020 with Crescent City?
This is kind of a loaded question for me because it comes in two angles. It comes as me being the vice president of operations for GCPL, and then it comes from me now being a club owner. Being a club owner, and I can say this on record, the GCPL is where we're starting. Depending on the growth of GCPL and how well the teams around us can continue to grow, we'll stay in the GCPL forever. If we feel as though that the GCPL is at a level that we have outgrown, then again, I can't be selfish and say, hey, Crescent City Football Club needs to stay here. Obviously there's other people that are involved. There'll be other people that are invested. So therefore I have to kind of respect their opinions on what needs to happen. There has already been talk about, probably have to start focusing on a little more when it comes to trying to get all of our clubs up to par. Louisiana Crew is a club that's in the GCPL now that we're really proud of. We feel as though that have been making great strides on trying to get their community involved. Obviously, they qualified for the U.S. Cup. Coach Joanne is really a top level coach, obviously coming from Barcelona. I mean, so they definitely have the right stuff to continue keeping the GCPL at a good level. Other clubs, Cajun Rush, I can't speak highly enough of. Pool Boys is something that Jeremy, our president, while he's in a small market, continues to really just put together a great squad and has a little character added to the league as well. So we're kind of hoping that we can continue working with these clubs and try to elevate at least the top division of what we're trying to achieve in the GCPL, and continue to show that, hey, listen, at a regional level, we can really keep this level good. We can really continue to kind of keep everything within close proximity to where, again, fans can travel. Players don't have to travel and spend the night, worrying about where they're going to, how long they're going to be away from home, obviously with their jobs and stuff like that. So, for me, the growth of the GCPL is pretty much priority number one on top of running CCFC. And I do see the other leagues popping up around, and obviously working with Jonathan Clore with the Bug Eaters with the Great Plains, which that can be another. Very excited about that. And I feel as though that CCFC will definitely help continue to elevate that. And we'll definitely continue to work with GCPL to offer. So, so again, it's a loaded question for me because it comes from both ends.
Well, best of luck to you guys as you guys get off the ground. And if people want to connect with Crescent City Football Club, how can they do that? How can they follow you, the progress, follow the team, learn more about the upcoming season, etc.? Sure.
Yeah, visit our website, crescentcityfc.com. All of our social media handles is Crescent City FC. info@crescentcityfc.com is our email address. We're active on all three platforms: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So please, if you want to know more information, contact us on any of those. And just stay tuned. I mean, we got a lot of exciting news coming up, and we really look forward to taking this thing to the next level.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, as always, thanks for joining the show. Thanks for sharing some of the behind the scenes of Crescent City. Best of luck as you get ready for this upcoming inaugural season in the GCPL. I know we'll have you back on long before then to talk about Crescent City and the GCPL and other things, but I'm really happy to get a chance to talk to you here in January as you guys are starting to roll things out. So appreciate you stopping by the show, and hope you had a great holidays, and he's definitely willing to help and listen. And
no one, no man, no woman, no child should ever have to drink green water with bugs, with algae, with disease in it. Bad water and a lack of toilets kills more people than all the wars in the world. We know how to bring clean drinking water right now to every single person on earth. And when you can bring water into communities, it truly transforms them. It changes everything. Or you could know that you'd made a difference. You could know that you had truly impacted the life of a family, of a community, of a region. There was either clean water or there wasn't. We believe in a world where every single person has clean and safe water to drink, and we will continue fighting until that happens.
thanks for watching this Friday. Hope you have a great weekend. Hope everyone at the United Soccer Coaches Convention are enjoying yourselves, taking it all in, getting a lot of notes written, meeting a bunch of people. As always, you can watch the show on Twitter. You can now watch it on YouTube.